Hello and welcome to the Tech in the Hood podcast. I'm your host, Ahmed Flex Omar. Tech in the Hood is a storytelling podcast that explores the past, present, and future of Chicago's cultural identity through conversations about community and technology. Each week, I reconnect with the friends and mentors who have shared this journey and spotlight new voices and innovators building the future of the Tech in the Hood. Welcome back to Tech in the Hood, the show that brings you all things art, business, culture, and of course, technology. Today, I got in the studio my buddy, Terrance Muse, real estate mogul. How do you like that for an introduction?
I like that. That's a good introduction. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome,
I
man.
think that describes me.
Yeah. Local Chicagoan?
Local Chicagoan. Yeah.
Born and bred?
Well, I'm from Waukegan, so
Okay.
that's my primary market where I sell. Northern Lake County is where I sell real estate.
Mhm.
As you know, I came to Chicago for college, and have been here ever since. But I decided to keep my local market in Northern Lake County.
Word.
Yeah.
You went to UIC.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Played ball there?
I did play basketball there. It was a
Yeah.
great experience. We went to the NCAA tournament, played Oklahoma State. It was quite the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, tell us a little bit about kind of like your experience when you first came to Chicago and
hmm
were freshman in college and
Well, I had been traveling to Chicago just to kind of go out and hang out after high school.
Mm.
Okay, and I guess in Waukegan, where I'm from, Chicago to a lot of people it seemed like a million miles away. It was like going out of the country. almost.
Dubai?
It was like Dubai, yeah. And it was just something magic to me to come to Chicago. So, long story short, when I decided to go to UIC, I was thinking about going to Temple University. My sister had gone to UW-Madison, and I had run into a guy that thought I could play Division I basketball, and said, "Hey, you should." I know Jimmy Collins. He was the coach at UIC. And I was actually a walk-on. So I enrolled, I applied, and I got in, and the rest is history. So, but my experience in Chicago has always been fun. I've met fantastic people. It's just always been home for me.
That's awesome. So you were a college athlete,
Yes.
and then now you're in real estate.
Yeah.
So what was your path?
Long and windy path. My path was I was going through, figuring out what I was going to do after high school, and always wanted to keep playing basketball. I was kind of benched my senior year in high school, but I just knew I wanted to play Division I basketball. I had some offers to go to play some Division II, Division III basketball, and I kind of politely declined. And that journey took me to playing junior college. So I actually played 2 years at the College of Lake County, which was a fantastic school. I actually got kicked off the team my first year because it was coached in a very unique way. It had very little structure in high school. When my high school coach was just
Not like Tom Thibodeau.
Definitely not Tom Thibodeau. No, the coach was coming in late.
Yeah.
The players were, were not coming to class and took it very. It wasn't quite as serious as what I had expected. The second year I came back and had a fantastic season. I obviously finished the season, didn't get kicked off the team, and from that point, I met the gentleman that kind of led me towards applying and going to UIC to walk on.
And how'd that relationship occur?
He was just like many very cool people that I met throughout my life. Had just seen me at the gym, knew I had worked really hard, knew I had a passion for playing basketball, and just invested the time to believe in me, and from that point on, I just took the leap and walked on UIC, and thanks to Jimmy Collins and fantastic coaching staff, God rest Jimmy Collins' soul,
God bless.
they allowed me on the team, and I played at UIC for 3 years.
That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and as a walk-on, I was able to travel to all the games with the team, which is, they don't have to allow that for you. Played in a number of games, and just had a fantastic experience.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So then, what year was this?
Oh, good question. It was in 2003.
2000?
Well, it was, I would say between 2000 and 2003.
2000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so because we're a tech show,
Yeah.
so that's like after,
Oh, we were walking around with Boost Mobile flip phones and pagers. So I know I'm dating myself, but yeah, that was the extent of our technology. There was no text messaging, at least towards later, or Facebook or anything. I mean, Facebook, I guess, came around a little bit later.
No, for sure. So in that period, in time, you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you see yourself going into real estate, or
no? Okay. No, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was fortunate enough to have my sister around that kind of was nudging me to go to law school, and I like many college kids, you want to play professional sports until you realize, hey, you start, you realize you're probably not going to go pro. Mm-hmm. And then you talk to enough people and they're playing overseas and they're not getting paid, and they're walking outside with people with machine guns sometimes. And you say, hey, I don't know if that's the path for me. And one thing I've always had pretty good foresight with some of this stuff, just like even with I towards my senior year in college, I could just see the new freshmen coming in and saying, oh, and realizing how much of a business college basketball is, and figuring, hey, I gotta make a move and figure out what I'm going to do with my life, Sure. And my mom was always a real estate broker. Yeah. So yeah,
there's the link.
There is the link. I never really knew what she did as a kid growing up, and I always had kind of admired my sister for going to law school and being an attorney. I thought that was pretty cool, and could see myself doing that. My path just didn't lead me towards that. I ended up taking my LSAT. My mom, during that period, had to have double hip replacement surgery, and really needed my help during that time. And it slowly had become more debilitating for her. And she was a very stubborn person, didn't want to get surgery right away. So I had to kind of step in and put the law school stuff aside.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's incredible. So did you shadow your mom, at work before that, or did you have any understanding on that? Because, it's real estate, it's not classes you're going to go take in school, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you are, I mean,
major.
I mean, ultimately, you're going to learn on the job in real estate. I mean, if there is no books you're going to read. I know they teach all these courses on real estate, different variations of stuff in real estate. Sure. But it is very much an on-the-job learning. I think that the class that I took was a month-long expedited class, and you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. I actually started...
So you're like Neo.
I'm like Neo, and yeah.
They just plugged you in.
They plug you in and let you go, and you're running around like a little rat. But my mom started me on real estate doing research for tax sale buyers on vacant land, and it was just I think the beauty of real estate is there's so many different aspects to make money and to explore, and I had the opportunity, at least initially, to do research on vacant land and determine whether it was in a floodplain, whether there was any value to the land, and report that back to the tax sale buyer. And just to contextualize, tax sale buyers are people that fall delinquent on their taxes, at least in the state of Illinois, at least at that time. It was a 3-year redemption period. If they didn't redeem within that 3-year period, that person who bought the taxes owned the property. If they did redeem, they had to pay interest to get their property back. So at that time, this gentleman that owned the property, own those properties outright and just want to figure out what to do with their land.
What to do with the land. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then what was the next step?
The next step for me was just to kind of get hands-on in the field. And again, when I had started was during the market crash. And again, it kind of into the market crash.
08, like you're talking about the 2008 market crash?
Around that time. And it was a terrible time, but I think that real estate is separates the men from the boys, or the girls from the women. And I think you have to, going into a good market can not always be beneficial for people because you think it's always going to be like that.
Yeah.
I had the luxury and misfortune of going into a bad market and kind of having the trial by fire and figuring out, hey, am I going to be passionate enough to continue to sell real estate? And even with my mom selling real estate at the time, she was primarily focused on new construction, and new construction was out the window at that time. A lot of the builders were doing home renovations, so there was just these kind of different.
Too much supply in the market.
Lots of supply on the market. Yeah, definitely different from nowadays, and different types of transactions. So when you're dealing with REO properties or bank-owned properties, it's a different type of paperwork. You're uploading it in portals now. You're dealing with distressed properties that are not always conducive to financing or borderline difficult to finance properties. So you're going to have to jump through additional hoops with people.
Yeah.
And just know how to navigate that. That was all new for my mom, so it wasn't anything that I got the benefit of piggybacking off her in the business. So while she was always, and to this day is very helpful to me, I always kind of lean on her if I want to talk about situations. But it was nice that we got to have some synchronicity, and me kind of having the fresh blood of going into this new market and figuring out how to navigate that market, and her having her expertise in real estate and being able to help me with that.
No, absolutely. That's great to have that, family support early on. But you also said that because of how real estate, changed and how it got, affected because of the market crash, it almost like you're dealing with new business models.
Sure.
And so I was an accountant, at the time. And, and I was a hedge fund auditor, and then I did taxes, worked at RSM, worked at, Deloitte, and, I came in, out of college and just trying to understand what is going on with all this real estate and, hedge, and what are these hedge funds, doing and so on. And I tell you, man, I felt like I was the dumbest person in the room because it did not make any sense to me.
Sure.
But then after the market crash and all these movies were made, I'm like, I was not dumb.
Yeah. Nobody knew.
It just did not make, any sense. Money was being made, from thin air.
Oh, I had I had friends that had gone into mortgages and were just making a killing. I mean, and I'm like, what? How are these people making all this money? And I think even during that time, with the Chicago nightlife stuff, there were so many people with so much money. Well, you figure out later that there were a lot of people doing mortgage fraud, and there were a lot of bogus appraisals, and there was a lot of funky stuff going on during that time.
Owning 5 homes and you're not supposed to own 5 homes.
The Big Short.
Big Short.
It's stated loans. So I mean, you didn't have to. You could just tell people you made $1 million, and the lender's like, okay, and the next thing you know, you got a property.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that caused the global meltdown of markets.
Sure.
And it just changed, things. So
you're
starting basically again, from scratch in a sense, right? You know, and so how were you able to navigate that?
You just keep going. And if you're passionate, you love what you're doing enough, you're going to just keep going and power through it and deal with the pain and the aggravation of the ups and downs of the real estate market. And you do it long enough until you have a breakthrough and things start to make sense. And
do you think your background as an athlete helped?
Yeah. I think that my going through high school, not having any scholarship offers, having to go through JUCO, having to walk on to a college team, just feeling, obviously you have your mom and she's very supportive, but you felt very alone in that journey. I mean, because your peers don't even think that you're gonna do that. You're my high school coach is a phenomenal person. He didn't believe that, could never have envisioned that I would have, gone to play college basketball. So you just develop a certain sense of perseverance and self-belief throughout that process. And I think that is what will get you through the hard times of just a lot of things in life in general and in real estate in general. I mean, it's a brutal business. I tell that to people starting up all the time.
Like a sport?
It is like a sport,
Yeah.
I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
I take things personally, and even growing up and playing basketball, I always listened to a lot of the older guys that I grew up with. I never thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
And they helped guide me through and learn a lot about basketball. At the time, basketball is kind of different now, where they have a lot of specialized training.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was just me at the YMCA and older guys that had played and taken a liking to me and knew that I was, again, being passionate about basketball and being there every day and keeping an open mind. And I think that kind of translates into real estate in the sense that you just have to listen to people, not think you know everything, and stick with the process.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned the YMCA.
Sure.
When I first came to America, I was telling you earlier, my first gig was on the west side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And doing IT.
Yeah.
And so the brother that hired me, Bashir Muhammad, took me to go play basketball.
Okay.
And I had no idea what I was into.
Sure.
And I played basketball just for fun. I played more soccer.
Sure.
Growing up, but it was one hell of an experience.
Sure.
So the first 10, 15 minutes, I'm like, I'm getting beaten up.
Oh yeah.
And then after that, you go, okay, well, now I'm gonna like figure this out and focus on my skills.
Sure.
So, but the fact that I completed a full game, people respect you, people appreciate you, and
Sure.
so on. So it was a really unique experience.
Sure.
Because also we had a basketball court at the non-for-profit where I worked at, but it had a drive-by shooting.
Sure.
At some point, so we couldn't play basketball.
Yeah.
There anymore. So that was the YMCA is definitely like a safe haven.
Yeah, I mean,
and a great place to network too.
Oh, for sure. So the YMCA for me was my home. I mean, my mom worked a lot. She was obviously selling real estate, and it kept me out of trouble. It kept me focused. It was at the time there weren't a lot of gyms in Waukegan, and it had a pool. It was just home. I met so many fantastic people. There were, and it was. You had to develop, at least at that place, a sense of toughness. People were constantly coming at you, and that was good. I mean, it definitely developed a lot of thick skin with me, and it developed a sense of toughness and a sense of community, and kept me. I knew when I was after high school, when I was after grade school, I knew where I was going. It was to the YMCA. I wasn't wandering the streets. I wasn't doing stuff that I shouldn't have been. My mom knew where to pick me up, so it was definitely a refuge for me growing up. So I'm very thankful for the YMCA.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit, about adversity.
Sure.
So something that I always say is adversity builds character.
Sure.
And there's this thing where people don't see themselves as, having triumphed,
Sure.
through adversity. But, you got, PTSD,
Sure.
for people that have experienced, certain thing. But then there's also post-traumatic, growth.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that needs to be, celebrated,
Sure.
So we see that a lot, in sports, somebody that, did not come from a big school, do well,
Sure.
or somebody who is in a big, school or for the international, audience, played in like a big club, and they were in this academy and so on, but then they didn't make it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have fully conceptualized the journey of things, because ultimately, when you leave college basketball, you feel kind of like a failure, and because you didn't go professional, you didn't achieve your dreams. And shortly thereafter, I started getting messages from kids, and I get messages on Facebook, or I'd run into people, and a kid messaged me and he said, "You're the reason I decided to play basketball, because I saw you working every day. You're the reason I decided to play college basketball." And I kind of looked at it a lot differently at that point. And I said, "Hey, this is just part of, this is my journey. And sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about the people you affect along the way. And that's more important than your journey all the time. You got to go through the hard stuff so other people can see what direction to go to, and set an example for people,
Right.
So I looked at it, and I approach the same thing with real estate. I try and be as positive to people. I think it's nice that I still sell real estate within the community that I grew up at, because I still play basketball in that same community, so people can see you. You're not too far away from them. You're very very relatable. I think that's important, and they can see that there's other stuff to do outside of what they might envision people are doing that they think are successful. Because certainly, there's a lot of other stuff that kids can be doing.
Yeah.
So, I giving back is while I wish I had more time to do more things, I also try and lead by example. And I think for kids that it goes a lot farther than people end up thinking.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, it's been a real joy. It's been a real joy just to see some of the impact you had on people. I had kids when I was growing up that said, "Thank you for driving me home every day." I used to drive kids home after, when I was in college and high school. They didn't have a ride home.
Yeah.
So you don't know where
It's the little things.
it is the little things. And you just, a lot of people like to talk a lot. I wasn't preaching to anybody. I was just busting my butt every day,
Right,
working
right,
hard,
right.
And I think that that's important.
No, I appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah.
you're all about the action.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm, similar, in that way,
Mm-hmm.
where, I just like to do things, and then, years later, somebody can look back and say, "Oh, that was interesting."
Yeah.
And, but because we got technology now,
Sure.
can do it, faster,
Sure.
and running an IT consulting company, and, doing AI, stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
Things are just moving,
Yeah.
so fast.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, you and I are really big networkers.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll
For sure.
love to network. And I haven't talked about my hospitality and nightlife,
Hospitality, yeah.
days, but
Yeah.
but that's how we met.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
For sure. I like to go out. I mean, I like to go out when I was in my 20s, and I, had the nightlife stuff had just kind of fallen on my lap. I met I just had the fortune of meeting such cool people, and club promoting just became something that it was random. It definitely wasn't something I was looking to do. And
It was in a college elective.
it was not a college elective. No, it just kind of fell in my lap. And me and you met at Enclave.
Yeah.
And again, it was just I'd always seen you out, and I had seen your promotion style. You'd always been a fantastic marketer.
Thank you.
And when we met, we just became, just really had a good connection. And it was a pleasure working with you, and we just had a lot of fun. And met very cool people. And people look at promoters and they say, club promoters, and they think it's a really kind of a negative connotation about that. But I learned a lot from promoting. I learned a lot from the owners, And even then, I felt like there were people that had looked at club promoting and just said, "Hey, I want to meet a bunch of girls," or "I want to make a lot of money."
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, those are things that are aspects of that. But I and I think you were the same way. We had looked at like how to build a party and how to organize an event and how to connect, talk to people in order to get certain venues. And it was just kind of that next level of what the industry is, and it's very kind of indicative of who you are as a person, kind of who I am as a person. It was just, I looked at it really like a true business.
Oh, absolutely. So we got to give a shout out to the person that introduced us, Anthony Jones.
Anthony Jones.
He was my neighbor at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
we lived in the same building, the South Loop.
So Anthony Jones has been a very, very good friend of mine for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the nicest people you ever meet. Never said a bad word about anybody. And I just have always had a high level of respect for him. And he's also introduced me to phenomenal people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good trait of a good friend.
Yeah.
And it's also just it's who he is as a person. If you have good, I feel like, and you the same way, you've introduced me to so many, and I hope the same way. You've introduced me to so many cool people. Anthony's introduced me to so many cool people. And, it's been a real pleasure. Anthony used to be one of the biggest promoters in the city of Chicago, and from me coming into going into nightlife and going out in the city, back then he promoted a party called the Voyeur, and the Voyeur, I always tell people, you had to wear slacks to get in there. If you weren't the cool person, you had to wear slacks. So imagine telling people now you had to go into a nightclub and wear slacks.
Yeah,
and
time.
And it was definitely, and you had to, and if you were going to talk to a girl, you had to learn how to dance.
Yeah,
So imagine all that stuff.
Different time.
Definitely wasn't any bottle.
Low tech.
Very, very, very low. We were very low tech at the time. I remember. Well, the highest tech thing at the time was that SkyTel pager. I don't know if you remember that, but very analog.
Brutal.
It was brutal. But if you had one of those things, you were one of the cool people.
Yeah.
But at that time, meeting Anthony, he was fantastic and always a classy, nice person. And we had done lots of cool events together, as well as introduced me to a lot of people.
For sure. So Anthony and I connected because we were neighbors, lived in the same building in the South Loop. And that was when the South Loop, going back to real estate.
Sure.
It was all new.
Yeah.
There's all these, new properties and so on. So there were times when you wouldn't meet, people because a lot of the units, people bought it as investment, properties. There was like one jewel, in the neighborhood. There were barely, any, restaurants. And so I connected with Anthony because Anthony also ran a tax, business, right? And
still does, yeah.
He still does. And I was an accountant, by day, doing events, and like you'll see me with people like God rest his soul, Timbuktu and those, DJs, and it was an interesting time. In Chicago, there's a lot of characters. Kanye West was on the come up. All these.
Well, you got like
characters.
Jerry Lorenzo and Don C. and all these very famous. Actually, saw Don C. this weekend, but just very famous people within the fashion and art industry that were just in the Chicago nightlife scene, and were just nice people. I mean, Don C. was all. I mean, I've seen Don C. and he doesn't know. In passing, we've always been very cool. Just always a super nice guy. I mean, I've seen him in Miami. I've seen him all over the place, and just always remembered me. Always was gracious and nice. And I think that was just kind of a Midwestern attitude of people that we were all kind of connected and family.
Right.
And I always appreciated that about the people that I've met here. We've always stuck together. When we see each other, it's always like, it's always a cool vibe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And me working as an accountant during the day, I needed an outlet.
For sure.
So, and when you work in corporate America, everybody's going to like a Big Ten, school.
Sure.
And I went to a small school. I went to a city school. And but my school was in the Water Tower, campus. So I was going to school in the Gold Coast. So I was going out, and I worked at the Hilton, as well at that time when I was in college. So I went to the HR lady. I built a relationship with her. I asked her if she could make me a Hilton, ID, but not put my occupation or not, put, my job,
Yeah.
in there. So I use that to get into anywhere.
Oh, really?
And build,
That's interesting.
I never told you that story,
No,
right?
no, I've never heard that before. No,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Most
man.
people.
And you're Flex Hilton. Yeah.
Flex filter. There you go. Well, it's funny. The flex, that's where around the time when the flex, thing,
For sure.
thing came up. But I got the name in high school when I was still in Abu Dhabi.
Oh,
When
that's
I was still
interesting.
in the UAE.
Okay.
Yeah, because as kids, you're like trying different things.
Sure.
You're like a teenager and you're playing sports.
Sure.
Like, all right, maybe I should bodybuild.
Sure.
And so what was my exposure to bodybuilding was those infomercials.
Okay.
So we got American infomercials.
Oh,
So you got the app.
if you got anything, you got American.
app flex or whatever. So I got those equipment.
Oh, did you really? Okay.
Yeah, and then after a while, I was like, okay, this is a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Let me figure out something else.
So then my friends were like, all right, you henceforth your name is Flex.
Okay.
And
All right.
it just-
Very cool.
And it just stuck.
Okay.
Right. So I've always been a big marketing, branding, type of guy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of separate the persona of like Ahmed Omar, the
Sure.
accountant, and then,
Yeah.
Flex,
Yeah.
the creative,
Sure.
and so on. So by day I was Ahmed Omar, the accountant. By night I was, Flex,
Yeah.
that's, doing events. And the way I actually got into like even doing events was a friend of mine owned a venue called Club 4.
Sure.
Just
I remember
became
that.
Evil Olive
Yeah.
and so on. And he was the GM and he's like, yeah, can you help me out? I always see you like doing some, cool stuff.
Sure.
And so I was like, sure. And he's like, and I can pay you. And I'm like, wait, you can pay me? Like, all right, sure. I'll take the money.
Yeah.
And then, so started doing some events and I was like, do you have a marketing budget?
Mhm.
Because I also used to throw events and parties when
Yeah.
I was in Abu Dhabi,
Sure.
so,
And I think you were the first person that really you did a lot of events. I mean, you did a lot of like I remember what was it like there were like swim parties and there were like just all these interesting events you used to set up at Enclave.
in January.
Yeah, in January.
I mean, that was one of those things where I would walk into an owner or a GM
Yeah.
and say, hey, I have a crazy idea. And
Yeah.
the second thing is like, how much is it going to cost me? 30,000, 40.
Yeah.
And it's like, but because I was an accountant,
Sure.
I can, speak the numbers game.
Sure.
Tell them, okay, this is how you're gonna, get your ROI and so on. And at times, you're just gonna lose the
For
money.
sure. That's part of the
But
business.
the return is high.
Sure.
If you, throw a little bit of, money. But then I also knew that people loved, experiences.
Sure.
So, I mean, this is before Instagram.
Yeah.
This is before influencers.
Yeah.
This, and people wanted, something, different. And me coming in and having that international experience
Mhm.
and being in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and, how things are done there. I was like, come on, man, we're in America.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So we gotta do better.
Yeah.
And I mean they listen. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it was just some of the things that I would just think about it right there on the spot, and I was like, I think that sounds cool.
Yeah.
And
It was always fun to go talk to Nick and Jim, the owners of Enclave, and just to bounce ideas off their head, and they kind of look at us crazy sometimes. But I think it was fun.
Yeah, and Matt and poor Matt
And Matt,
Matt,
they were all fantastic.
and Matt's got a spot at Adelina now.
Yeah.
a restaurant.
Yeah.
And, he was
Great
cool.
place.
So, yeah, he would always go.
He's always rolling his eyes at you.
He would always roll
Yeah.
my head. He's like, come on, man.
He's like, what are these guys talking
He's
about?
like, what
now?
are you talking about now? Because
Beach party after the pool and in this
in January.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, you wanted me to turn my dance floor into like a Vegas, theme? I was like, yes, and I want you to fly in DJ Vice.
There you go.
You
Yeah,
know,
there
so-
you go.
But I also had Brandon Carone.
Yeah.
you know,
Brandon
and
was phenomenal. Oh,
and
man.
and Brandon would be like, listen to Flex.
Yeah.
listen."
Oh yeah. He was man. Alexios had started during that time. He was a great guy.
Alexios, and
Yeah.
then you had Leo.
Yeah.
the, the Greek, and Leo and I, vibed, and actually Leo was the one that brought me.
Really? Yeah.
In there, but because of that, like I've met so many great friends.
Sure.
I mean, I'm even friends with Keith Harris from the Black Eyed Peas.
Yeah.
Because we hosted them.
Yeah, for sure.
Over there. So I mean, I can keep going on and on about, that experience,
Mhm.
but
And all of it kind of it all lends to who you are, and to help diversify you and be more relatable and connect with more people. So you kind of bring it back to kind
yeah,
of marketing. You just meet so many different types of people, and you're forced to be in these. Not forced necessarily, because I think you're naturally a social person, and just me, I'm just a naturally a social person. Do I think that I'm some overt mark try and be a overt marketing? I know I like to naturally meet people and have natural conversations. And I think that if you genuinely like people, like talking to people,
yeah,
those things will be natural.
yeah.
So I think that you have, managed to build quite a business, just off being relatable and meeting people.
Yeah.
And I think promoting allowed us to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I looked at it as, like you said, a business.
Sure.
And for me, when I looked at all these, venues, I looked at them as like real estate
Sure.
opportunities. And there is so much more you can do. You can do corporate events, you can
Sure.
do charity events.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's how I got into doing consulting for charities because of that.
Sure. I
Because
remember your charity
a
events.
lot of non for profits were just doing the same thing. And it's like, oh, come to our event at this
Mhm.
hotel, and then we got the auction items, and it's
Yeah.
like
Boring.
bears from 1985. I'm like, okay, you lost the women,
Yeah, exactly.
you lost the young, generation.
Sure.
And so at that time, things were changing, right? So from a tech term, we're entering Web 2.0.
Sure.
So like Google, Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, all these new tools
Mhm.
were being born. And for me, I saw that as a consulting opportunity for
Yeah.
these small businesses, because they were not looking at
Mhm.
these, tools in terms of enablement, right?
Sure.
And and then Facebook eventually started like building business products,
Mhm.
and so on. But I was using, Facebook early
Yeah.
to like build, businesses, and then eventually I started my own not for
Sure.
profit and built it on as a Facebook fan page. Did not even have a website for the first 2 years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and then later on, Facebook became a client.
Okay. All right. Look, it
And
all came full circle.
during the pandemic,
Yeah.
so things come full circle. But those events till this day, people reach out to me and say, "Hey, man, are you still doing any events?"
Oh, really?
I walked into
Your bottle service
Wall
flags.
Street,
Yeah.
Wall Street, and it was in Morningstar, and this gentleman who's like a partner in
Yeah.
an accounting firm. He's like, "Hey, man, thank you for my childhood." And I'm like,
Sure.
"What are you talking about?" He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, I remember when you threw that event with so and so
Mhm.
celebrity." I think it was when we brought in Kim Kardashian.
Did we really? Okay.
Yeah, it was a long. This is before I met you.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
was,
Okay.
yeah, this was this was
I remember
before.
Charlie Sheen was there and like
That
like
was
winning.
yeah.
They brought a lot of cool. They brought some random
the torpedo of truth. So yeah, I mean, this is another side
Yeah.
of me that people are hearing
Sure, for sure,
for the first time.
Yeah, they wouldn't expect it, but yeah,
At
you were
least-
out there, man.
At least for the podcast.
Yeah.
Podcast.
You were in a suit
purposes.
jacket even then.
Hey,
They-
it was a brand. People remember.
Oh, for sure.
People
for sure,
remember it.
for sure.
Yeah, and people always were like confused, especially when I would go to meetings with like sponsors,
Sure.
partners, different companies, and I at that time, I left the accounting world,
Mhm.
so I was fully flex.
Sure.
And so, they're expecting this bodybuilder. They have no idea what to expect.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So one guy was like, "Is that the name your mother gave you?"
Yeah.
Dad was a bodybuilder.
Yeah, there you
Like,
go.
oh, okay, makes sense. What happened to you? And I'm like, DNA did not translate
Yeah,
or something. Genetics is a
Yeah,
weird thing.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
want to get down to business. So yeah,
Got your
man.
foot in the door. Though.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
So I've met some really powerful people, but again, it helped me also give back to the
Mhm.
community. There's so many young kids
Mhm.
that were graduating college, and they were not told that they needed internships
Sure.
and so on. So I was able to help a lot of,
Sure.
people,
Yeah.
call out Perrine.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
He's a big shot right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
But yeah, like years later when I was got my seat at the UN's Economic and Social Council,
Mm-hmm.
he was working, for a firm in New York, and he showed up. We were doing an event with the Mexican
Okay.
ambassador, and he was telling them, how much impact,
Oh, that
I
was
had
nice.
on him, and
Yeah.
his friends, at Loyola,
Sure.
and so on. So that was nice,
Yeah.
But when you're doing these things, you don't know.
No,
You're just being you.
for sure. But
Right.
I think if you come into it genuinely trying to help people and get them into and make sure they have a good time and not being like some money grab, I think that's what people remember. People
Yeah.
remember you being genuinely looking out for them, and I think that we had a good group that was, genuinely cared about making sure people had facilitated a good time for people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
Yeah.
a lot of those for me were in the medical community.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah. So great times. And, I never officially retired. So maybe I'll come back for just one.
One more?
One more.
One more of that.
Do a Daft Punk.
Yeah, there you go.
One more.
We saw Black Coffee at Navy Pier, and Navy Pier has quite the setup now.
That was
an
that was
amazing concert.
that was an experience.
Yeah.
And for me, I
Oh,
was
yeah, you were there.
so
That's right, yeah.
happy to see an African house, DJ.
Oh, for sure.
So I mean, obviously being in Chicago, the
Sure.
birthplace of house music,
Yeah.
but to see with where music is right now,
Sure.
right? You got Afro beats and
Sure.
like all this African, and Black Coffee was just so inspiring, creative.
Sure.
The fashion bit, on the screen. I mean, that was a whole fashion shoot that they did.
Oh, really?
That they
Okay.
put up, on the screen. So
Okay.
probably one of the best representations that I've seen,
Sure.
coming out of the continent. And
Yeah.
and we got Navy Pier, so we need to do more events like that.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I liked the fact that it had the VIP booth behind the DJ set,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
very kind of an immersive, cool experience for people. I think that's kind of it was just fun.
Yeah.
It was nice, and it was beautiful views. And
Yeah,
nice.
It's
nice venue.
it's almost like you're there, but you're part of a live stream.
For sure. It was phenomenal. It was a great one of
Yeah.
my for the early part of this year, it was one of my favorite experiences.
Yeah, I was running around different places. So I didn't make it up there.
Yeah.
But you got the videos.
Well,
so.
I bribed the bouncer, so he
What?
let us up there. Yeah.
We don't do it. We don't do that. We do not do that. That is called a gift.
Yeah, it was a gift.
and it's tax deductible gift. Up to a certain number. So,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm no longer a practicing accountant. You like all the disclaimers.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Yeah. But that being said, going back to the tech, right?
Yeah.
So real estate, like any other industry, has been impacted by technology.
Sure.
And so for me, I'm always curious about the tech stack.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think the most impactful thing for people is information.
Mhm.
And I think, before in real estate, there was just very little information for consumers. Your agent had all the information. In fact, when my mom was selling real estate, they just had files of listings, and you're just going to go show houses based off those files. People wouldn't know anything about those houses. And I think it led to a lot of distrust of certain agents, because I remember people that showed 5 houses and said, I remember an agent that said this to me, and he said, oh, you have to pick between the 5. So just kind of limiting the amount of information provided to consumers. And I think the beauty now is consumers are much more educated now about real estate.
Mhm.
Some people find that to be like I think you kind of walk a fine line with incorrect information and information, but I think it's important for people to be informed. And then as a realtor, you're filtering through that information to kind of navigate to say what's correct and what's not. So technology has provided a lot of information and education for people, which is important. Us as real estate agents, it's allowed us to reach and market to a lot more people, and to do with even with AI, it's allowed us to do our job a little bit better with creating text information for listing descriptions.
Mhm.
I've seen people Also, which is an interesting thing that I'm looking into, is to do neighborhood information based off algorithms of recent sales to be more informative to people. Because you beyond the information as a consumer, and not as a consumer, but as an agent, you always want to have lead generation, and I think you'll see more of those things contribute to generating more leads. Interesting time during the pandemic. I know there was a narrative that there will be no more realtors. They'll just do virtual showings at that point.
In the metaverse.
In the metaverse, yeah. There's a real estate company that just operates within the metoverse.
Yeah.
I don't know how well they're doing, but
but you didn't purchase any land.
I didn't purchase any land. No, me and Snoop were living next together in the metaverse.
You're living next to Snoop.
Yeah. But and I think that it was kind of a wake up call, because even during COVID, and now we were socially distancing and wearing masks, but I started getting calls from people, and I'm like, you don't know as a real estate agent what was going to happen during that time, because obviously so much of our business is focused on person to person contact.
Sure.
And you just heard, hey, well, everything will be virtual, and slowly it'll transition into just virtual showings. And what do you need real estate agents for at that point, or buyers brokers at that point? And lo and behold, 3 weeks into COVID, I start getting phone calls from people and wanting to physically see properties. So I say that to say, I think that technology is more of it, at least now is more of an assistant to the actual physical broker, and we work hand in hand. So yes, we are physically there to shake your hand, and not during COVID, but to guide you through that physically, through that process, and be that upfront person to be there for you. But also you're doing a lot of virtual showings. There's a lot of Manaports, which are like virtual tours that you'll see more incorporated into listings for people that are out of town. And you see more drone aerial stuff. So just more information for the consumer that kind of helps out, in addition to that physical touch of a realtor being there,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, pandemic was definitely a wake-up call
for sure
for a lot of businesses. So at that time, I was running my non-for-profit, NGO, and we did better than a lot of non-for-profits because we were digital first.
Sure.
And so we didn't have the same, challenges. Because we didn't put sort of like the way our business model, was set up was we were not focused on like the one annual, gala for our revenue. So our revenue was, diversified. We were really big on, individual, contributions.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of my friends, were, very, supportive, and we worked with a lot of tech companies and, specifically fintech. Companies, and there's all these fintech companies that people have never heard of, at the time, and other not-for-profits were not reaching out to them.
Sure.
And so for us, like we have consumer data, and the community trusts us
for sure.
So let's work, together. And you're all about giving back,
Sure.
So it was great, man. And because we kept our costs, low, because we're a digital, platform. We were able to, weather, the storm, so to speak, and even thrive.
Sure.
And also help other, not-for-profits. I mean, I remember, there were not-for-profits that were struggling just to get, do webinars and Zooms. We did 40 in 2 months.
Wow. Look at that reach.
Yeah, reach, and it helped us with fundraising,
Sure.
And two of those webinars were actually with Facebook.
Wow.
So and with diaspora, communities and so on. And then I did an in-person, event, for Muslims in tech.
Sure.
In the Facebook office in DC. So it was a great experience, but I felt like because of the pandemic, we almost like just went into the future, right?
For sure, it really kind of escalated things quite a bit.
Quite a bit, and I think also with a lot of older people than like boomers that would look at millennials and say, oh, these what are these share economy? What is it?
Sure.
Yeah. But all of a sudden, it's like all those tools that were built are now being used. Like
Sure.
Instacart, all those tools became helpful.
Sure.
And so for me, right now, it's like there's always a crisis. There's always something there. So as a business,
as
an
entrepreneurs,
entrepreneur,
we're looking to fix problems.
yeah,
And make consumers' lives a little bit easier, and
yeah,
and benefit people. So yeah, and I think that there's just so much online information for people to assist in purchasing houses as well. I think that there's a lot of online resources, a lot of YouTube videos. Even with DIY stuff, I think it's important with real estate for people just to get a better understanding of how houses work. So I think there's just fantastic information for consumers to aid and assist in purchasing or renting or whatever fits their needs.
Technology has not replaced you, has it?
No.
Okay.
Nor do I think that it. I don't know. I mean, I think I talked to you about this, and I said that me and my wife we're going to buy a couch, and she called me and she said, "Hey, I found this couch online."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, whatever you want, whatever couch is an expensive couch." and we bought that couch, and I sat when it came in, and I sat on that thing, and I said, "Oh, this is not good." It was a low back. I was like falling backwards in the couch, and I didn't want to say anything because my wife was pregnant at the time, and. Just better to, I said, we'll get a new couch soon. It's okay. I can live with this, And a couple of days passed, and she sat on this couch, and she said, "Oh, I made a mistake." I said, this couch is really uncomfortable. She said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Oh, it's okay. It's fine." She's like, "No, we're getting rid of this." So I bring that back to real estate in the sense that real estate is something. It's like buying a couch. You want to sit down, you want to touch, you want to feel it. You want to know that that it's going to work for you in your living space. So the digital world is fantastic, but there's also an element of just physical presence in certain things.
I mean, you said assistant, earlier, right? So a lot of people reach out to me these days about AI, and
Sure.
I'm like, AI is nothing new.
No,
Siri,
it's just an algorithm.
Yeah, Siri's been around for a minute. You're not freaking out when you were talking to Siri and telling Siri, "Hey, Siri, remind me to do this." Siri, what's the weather?
Yeah.
Siri, call my mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Siri, like, well, now why are you, freaking out? So I always tell people, think about AI as the co-pilot.
For sure.
But you're the pilot.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some fun and nice and definitely in nice stuff to do and build some things within AI platforms to really assist people and help them out.
It's an exciting time. I mean, think of it as the new app market.
For sure.
So new companies or not new businesses that are coming out, and so you're going to see an app market that is just AI powered apps.
Really? Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, I use ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic resource for listing descriptions and to provide information. So it's definitely a cool tool.
For sure. I mean, it is a great, assistant, and but it is with all great power comes great responsibility.
For sure.
So it is important to look around, the ethics of technology and AI. So even for Facebook, I use it as a community building, tool. But then bad actors, used it for election tampering and
for sure,
all sorts of things. So technology is a double-edged
Well, I mean, even with a lot of the advertising now, and they'll have like Joe
fake.
Rogan talking about advertising progress or products where his mouth is barely moving, but you hear his voice. Yeah. I think that I just see so much of that now, and I think there's always the pros and the cons of new technology.
Oh, absolutely, and that's where education,
for sure,
comes in, and there's an EdTech, platform that I'm currently working on.
Okay.
I deployed it like B2B to certain, clients right now.
Okay.
But at some point I'll release it to the public.
Okay.
So, people can take like courses. They're sort of like micro learning,
Okay.
so because a lot of these, terms are, so technical
Mhm.
and, you're almost speaking a different, language, and that
Sure.
creates, fear and anxiety,
Sure.
for people. And I'm like, no, take this certificate course. You're going to feel a lot smarter in like, 10 minutes, 30 minutes,
For sure.
so that's, something that I'm launching,
That's
next
fantastic.
next year. So it's been under research. I was part of a competition with the Department of Defense, with,
Mhm.
DARPA, for EdTech, products. So the product that we've built now is being, used by a non-for-profit on
Okay.
on the west side of, Chicago. So yeah, the only way to stay ahead of this is, through, education.
Yeah. And I think it, even, to tie it back into some of the stuff with AI, we do a lot of AI staging for people.
Hmm.
And I think that's very helpful in vacant spaces for people to see where things are supposed to go.
Yeah.
Even with with lack of inventory in housing, there's more new construction, more raw spaces, and people need to visualize things. And I think it's a fantastic tool to use for people that can't see past some of the raw spaces that you
Right.
see now in some of the new construction.
Yeah, and I think I'm big on mixed reality.
Sure.
So the metaverse was more virtual,
Hmm.
reality, but mixed reality with in terms of like the new Oculus and the new Vision Pro,
Sure. I want
from
to go to a
Apple.
basketball game when sit courtside on
Sit
the
court,
Oculus.
sit court. I
Yeah.
mean, that's incredible,
Yeah.
right? Or you're an engineer
Sure.
in Sweden. I'm an engineer in Chicago.
Sure.
We can work on the same project,
Sure.
with our headsets. So and
As the technology becomes or less expensive,
yeah,
and they develop it further, really the sky is the limit. And you will see, you know, more people doing virtual showings if they have the mixed reality where they can.
yeah.
It feels like they're walking through that
So
house.
it feels like they're walking
I can
through that.
I
Yeah,
can totally see that.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But like I said, like it's not going to replace,
No.
us. Over the years,
No.
technology, has been a net job,
Yeah.
creator.
Sure.
Because of all the tech equipment. I mean, we're sitting in a podcast,
Yeah.
studio.
For
Go
sure.
back, 20 years, that was not possible.
For sure. For sure. For
You
sure.
know,
There's so many education resources available for people. It's phenomenal right now.
and so going back again to the real estate,
Mm-hmm.
and let's talk a little bit, about development, right?
Sure.
So you see, certain neighborhoods, in Chicago, being gentrified,
Mm-hmm.
and so landscapes are constantly, being redeveloped, and
Mm-hmm.
things are moving. So people are interested in like, um, investing in real estate or
Sure.
get while at the same time like going, okay, well, I don't want to impact the local community or
Sure.
do things like that. Like,
I mean, I think it goes back to housing scarcity.
mhm,
And I think as housing, as mindful as people want to be about communities,
mhm,
I think as housing becomes more scarce and there's less land to develop land, they just have to put housing in certain places.
mhm,
And kind of an interesting, I actually live in where I live now
mhm.
is near Cabrini Green.
For people that don't know Cabrini Green.
Cabrini Green is an old project housing that is no longer there.
Mhm,
But we have the luxury of being surrounded by a lot of fields,
mhm.
and they're not developing it. So they're just as a grandfather in for the previous community in there.
Mm,
And I think that people, we kind of juggle with the idea of being very respectful of the neighbors and the people that were there before. I know that I've heard people that live there and like, well, we don't want all the block parties and we don't want all the
mhm.
celebrations. And I said, this is their community. We're living where we're in their community.
Yeah.
And I think that there is this push for people to say, well, this is ours, but this is, they have lived there long before we have.
Mhm.
And you just have to be respectful and And this is Chicago.
And come
you
on,
know?
block parties are what made Chicago. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. But you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. They can get loud and they can get a little rowdy, but I think that's part of Chicago.
We do block parties in Loyola. Loyola owns the land on Pearson Street, so we shut it down.
Yeah, no,
we throw a party.
They have a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun, and I'm for it. I mean, I'm from Chicago, so I think that it's just part of being in Chicago.
It's in the DNA.
Yeah. So I just think that you do see things. Development has been pushing west and south, and you do feel bad for some of the existing communities that are there that just kind of get pushed out.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to educate people about some of the importance about home ownership. As much as I'm an advocate for, just as much of an advocate for finding out what your best situation is for you, whether it be buying or renting. I'm never one of these people that are pushing anything to buy. I think that you have to weigh the cost and weigh what your idea of where you want to be, long term. And sometimes things work in different directions. But it is also important to make it to be there for people, to educate them, to make it seem like it's not such a far-fetched thing to own a home. Because I don't think that there's enough people out there that they think that it's just such a hard thing to do. And I think as us as real estate agents have to make it feel more easy and guide them towards making that more easy.
All right.
And you're not, so to dial that back is important to kind of have ownership within your community so that so you can't always get pushed out quite as easily,
Well, I'll keep you in mind when I'm developing the real estate courses.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I'd be happy to help.
On the platform.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So, last question.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a young person that's interested in getting into real estate?
So my advice always ties back to when I was playing basketball, and I can teach you all the drills in the world. And are you going to do them every day? And a lot of the kids, most of the kids, one of the reasons that I never trained a lot of kids, because no one was ever going to work like how I was going to work and do those drills to make sure you sharpened your sword. And my advice to people getting into real estate is you got to put in the work and you got to stick with it. There are a lot of people that get into real estate and watch $1 Million Listing and think that they're going to do luxury real estate and they're going to be a millionaire and things are going to be fantastic. That's just not how things work. There's such a crazy high turnover rate in real estate. It's not it's a fantastic, fun profession, but I think that very good real estate agents make it seem like it's easier than what it is. So for young up and coming people getting into real estate, I think it's important to stick with and be passionate. And you're gonna have to fight against the dog. You're gonna have to fight against me. I'm gonna be
dog.
I'm a dog. So so I think you just have to keep an open mind, continue to learn, and stick with it. Real estate is a very hands-on experience for people. You learn about real estate from actually doing a transaction and doing hundreds of transactions is how you become a really good real estate agent. So, one thing I pride myself on is I can see problems ahead of time for people that we're in a transaction, and we try and navigate around those problems and prepare for the worst and hope for the best for people. So, I think again, it's just important for people to just be passionate about real estate and see if it works. I was fortunate enough that I got into real estate and I like what I was doing. I'm sure people get into real estate and they just realize it's not for them. Try it, do things. You're not gonna find out what you're good at unless you do it. Yeah. So don't be scared to do stuff.
No, absolutely. So talking about skills.
Yeah.
At another friend, attorney, Joe Brocato,
sure,
who's here on the show, and he had a new book out about relationships.
Sure.
He talked about soft skills and how the narrative needs to be changed from soft skills to power skills.
Sure.
And today, we have all this technology and so on, but we're forgetting, how to be more, human.
Sure.
And so that is, important. And you've always done a, good job, with that, taking care of people, looking
Sure.
out for people, building, relationships, so I do appreciate that about you.
I try. Yeah. I think I've had the luxury of being a buyer's broker. So as a buyer's broker, you get to, again, I do a lot of listings now, but I started out being primarily a buyer's broker. And I think as a buyer's broker, you have to learn how to navigate people and be very patient with people and listen to people, And I think those skills will help you on all aspects of dealing with people in real estate. So it's very much a skill you have to work on.
So a couple of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Cubs or Sox?
Cubs.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
Jackie Robinson special edition.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Awesome. All right. So we got a plan because you and I have never been to a Cubs game. So
I know. I want to take my son to a Cubs game.
Let's do it. We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Uncle Flex edition.
For sure. He's good.
He's good. Big. And then naturally, we've been talking a lot, through friends about Kendrick and Drake. So
sure. Oh, you're gonna get me into that. I'm a Drake fan. So,
put you on the spot.
I'm a Drake fan. I mean, I think competition is always healthy. I don't think I think it kind of muddies the waters in competition when you start getting too negative and getting away from just kind of like good rap, good music. You know, so. And the internet takes information and runs with it so wild now. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the music. I found it to be exciting, and I just felt towards the end it just became something different, But I'm a Drake fan, so just if that answers your question,
that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a fan of both.
Are you really? Okay. I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of. Kendrick Lamar hasn't put out a lot of music. So Drake puts out music all the time, and
he's Mr. Nonstop.
Mr. Nonstop, yeah.
But on the other hand, Kendrick's got a Pulitzer, so
there you go. I can't argue with that.
So the nerd in me is like, Pulitzer, bro.
Yeah.
But no, Drake has been incredible, and what I appreciate about Drake is how he navigates constantly the changes, in the industry.
And I think he gets a bad rap for having, using different genres of music. But like Black Coffee produced one of his albums. No one was even, I mean, not to say Black Coffee is a very popular artist, but to have him produce your music and to bring it more mainstream. And when it wasn't something that even his audience, I think, knew at the time that they would like to hear, it wasn't, I mean, it was kind of an unpopular thing to do at the time. And he just made an amazing album. So in order to grow as an artist, I think you have to be diverse in what your music is.
He's definitely constantly challenging himself.
Sure.
We also live in a global world.
Sure.
Right? So things have changed because of TikTok.
Sure.
And that's actually why a lot of, African music, scaled. So you have a lot of young kids that are now like making music on their laptops.
Yeah.
Going back to Tech in the Hood, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then it's getting viral on TikTok. And so and then it becomes like a dance, sensation. And then you got kids in India that are picking it up. So if you got millions of kids in India dancing, to that tune and so on, all of a sudden your life is, changed.
Yeah.
So Drake is that type guy that's like, okay, I'm looking at global data.
For sure. I think another interesting thing you brought up is, so there was a song that came out of that rap beef called BBL Drizzy. And that song, which not Kendrick Lamar, but Metro Boomin ended up remixing or adding like drums to it, was actually an AI song. It was a soul-produced AI song, which is phenomenal to me. And I think that's kind of, you talk about like ingenuity and like the music industry. I think that's a real interesting thing that's going to happen with the music industry.
We'll bring Jeremy on next time.
Jeremy can come on next time. Yeah, he can perform next time. I embarrass him all the time with trying to play his music videos. Yeah. He hates when I do that. They're still on YouTube, so I'm sorry.
Hey, those are receipts.
Yeah, they are receipts. Yeah, lives on the internet
I
forever.
might mix him up with my AI and mess with him when he comes.
Oh, that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. Yeah.
So, but yeah, man. That being said, like it's a pleasure.
Oh, man,
having
great
you,
conversation. Yeah,
having you on this show. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and continued success. Very well produced. Just
you,
watching all the shows, just couldn't be happier for you.
Appreciate it.
I think it's a nice way to diversify your business and just give people an opportunity to talk and meet people and get to hear people that maybe you wouldn't always get to hear from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also it's a great way to catch up, with old friends.
For sure.
I mean, there
for
are
sure. Yeah.
things that you learn about people in a 1 hour podcast interview that you might have known for a decade.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
So it works both ways.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again on the show.
Hopefully. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll hold you to that.
Absolutely.